All right, cool. So we are recording now. I'd like to welcome everybody to our July State TA Day webinar. First State TA Day webinar, I think, since we have become the Colorado Department of Early Childhood. So super excited about this change. If you have any questions about what this means, reach out to Michelle or Lilith or I, just in terms of what it might mean for you right now, just thinking about messaging and if you are putting out any information, making sure you have the correct logos and everything like that, because we are a new department now. So we have a lot to cover today. I'll put the agenda in the chat just one more time. We are going to start today by having Stephanie Stout Oswald give us a presentation on shared measures. Stephanie, are you all ready for that?
I believe so. Let me just pull up my tab.
All right. I think, there you go. Cool. So I'm going to let Stephanie take it away. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to. Hello, everyone. I think I have met or seen some of you in other meetings, but for those of you who don't know me, I am Stephanie, and I am the, yes, Megan.
Hey, Stephanie, your audio is pretty quiet.
Let me fix that. Okay. It's these headphones. They don't work properly. Please hold.
And just a reminder that we will be sending out all of the presentations and everything like that, in the coming week or so. So.
All right, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes, much
awesome.
better.
Sorry about that. I need to just get rid of these headphones. So hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm the Data and Information Strategy Manager for the Department of Early Childhood. And I was supporting Megan and Kristen with reporting on the Early Childhood Council shared measures for the first pilot. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of history, what we learned from the report, and what you can expect from data collection and reporting moving forward. So a little bit of background. Kristen, you want to take this?
I will. So I almost said good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kristen Lang. I'm the Program Access Manager with our Preschool Development Grant Unit. As I hope you all know, we have been engaged with ECLA and in particular the Data and Evaluation Subcommittee and all of the councils in this shared effort to develop shared measures for early childhood councils. And you all know we went through the first pilot of those shared measures and tested out some processes and data reporting tools in that first pilot. And so I'm excited about today because what Stephanie has done is take all the information that you all reported in that first pilot phase and put it together to give an example of the true purpose of all of this work around shared measures, which is how do we highlight the collective impact of councils on Colorado's early childhood system. That is the purpose of this initiative. It's what everyone was pulling all those different metrics for. And so she's going to give us an example today of what that collective story can look like. So I just want to share, obviously we've made significant changes in how we're doing reporting and analysis for this second phase of the pilot of shared measures that we're in right now. And so perhaps some of the way that this story gets told in the future will look different. But we wanted to give you this first tangible example about from the data that was provided, what we can say back to our policymakers, to our communities, to our governor, everywhere about what councils are doing across the state in a consistent manner. So I will pass it back to Stephanie to share that story with you.
Awesome. Thanks for the background. So I'm going to walk through these in the order of statewide outcomes and local priorities as they were outlined in the guide provided to councils. So this first statewide outcome is around high quality and early care and education and making that available to every child in every community. So I calculated the average percent of the estimated birth to 5 population that's covered by high quality licensed capacity in a catchment area. So across the 28 reporting early childhood councils, an average of about 20.3% in a given catchment area. 20.3% of the birth to 5 population was covered by licensed capacity in that catchment area. Does that make sense? Yes? No? Okay. Feel free to raise your hand if you have questions along the way. So moving on to a couple specific portions of this outcome, we found that the average proportion of the population covered by the existing licensed capacity across 22 reporting early childhood councils was about 8.5% infant care, 10.8% toddler care, and 20% preschool care. And on average, 30% of licensed providers in a given catchment area had a QRIS of 3+. Moving on to the second statewide outcome, which was to contribute to a more highly qualified early childhood workforce. We looked at PDIS users across Colorado with more than 15 hours of training, and across the state, I believe from 24 reporting early childhood councils, 45% of PDIS users had more than 15 hours of training, so nearly half. And councils, yes, Brenda.
I have to ask because this is our thing. So when you look at that 45% of users, is that based on all users or active users?
I believe this is active users.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's Stephanie, I'll add a little. The PDIS reports pull anyone who was because active users has a very particular meaning for PDIS. And I think it has to do with whether they logged in the last 30 days. So what we did was pull anybody who, the report rather looked at the prior calendar year and included both what PDIS terms as active and inactive, because it could have been the case that a professional was not in there, in the last month, but was in there very actively the several months prior to that, and maybe is just about to go back in there. And so we wanted them to be counted too. So it's looking at the full calendar year, but those are all those reports that were established in PDIS for councils. They all should have had those same metrics included.
That makes good sense. Yes, because I know the active and inactive fluctuates in a short time period. So that's why I asked that question. Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you for that clarification, Kristen. I've included that in our notes. So I also wanted to point out that about 30%, almost 30% of councils reported having more than 50% of the PDIS users in their catchment area complete more than 15 hours of training. So there's a lot of good work happening, and as always, still room for improvement. So when we switch to looking at professional development opportunities and training, we see that 9 early childhood councils reported having at least one research-based professional development event. So because this is a local priority, we weren't expecting all councils to report on it. So this is just a subset of councils that really wanted to focus in on this. Across those 9 early childhood councils, there were 83 total research-based professional development opportunities across the state, which is great. I think that's a good number. It could always be higher. I'm sure it is higher in reality, right? Given a lot of you probably didn't report on this. But I think this looks great. 7 of the 12 early childhood councils that reported any information in terms of social emotional health and development. Sorry, let me start over again. When we look at all of the areas that could be prioritized by local councils, social emotional health and development promotion made up the most councils. More councils were interested in social emotional health and development, making that a priority than the other 2 areas. But there were 2 large areas of the state, so more professionals that were given child growth development and learning opportunities. Anything you wanted to add, Kristen or Megan?
Just as you all probably see on the slide, this relates to that PDIS report where we wanted the council to identify what was a competency most important to them that they prioritize, and then be able to, utilizing that report, pull how many professionals had completed training in that competency in the prior calendar year. So when Stephanie is referring to some of the slide content, just so you all know, at the top in the header, it talks about what local priorities she's referencing, if you're looking at the guide too.
Thank you. So we also looked at how coaching is broken down across the state, or across early childhood councils that prioritized these particular items. So across the state, we had 119 EQIT graduates and 40 pyramid graduates. And these were reported by about 13 early childhood councils. Sugar coaching, so coaching through the Sugar application, was lower than other coaching. And I can't really provide any examples of what other coaching looks like. But, let me know if you have questions, and I'm happy to dig into the data a little further. I will note that councils did report some uncertainty about how to report this professional development information associated with the pyramid coaching model, and how pyramid information might be reflected in PDIS reporting. So hopefully that's clarified as we move through new and improved iterations of data collection. So moving on to our green outcome around access to affordable and quality licensed early childcare. We looked at the estimated total eligible children across Colorado that are served through CPP, Head Start, or CCAP. I will note we did come up with 37%, but the numerator in this measure will have some children duplicated. So those children that are served through more than one of those programs will be overrepresented. Overall, about 36,000 children were served across Colorado, and 53% of all total eligible children served by each ECE. So when we look at the average for each ECC, for each of those ECCs, we estimate about 53% of the eligible population is served by all or one of those. Questions? Okay. Now we'll move on to the percent of CCAP accepting programs. On average, 63.5% of the providers in the 14 reporting ECCs had fiscal agreements with CCAP. So on average, about 64% were serving kids who are eligible for CCAP. Out of the 14 ECCs that reported on this, 7 reported at least 60% of the providers in their catchment area having fiscal agreements. So more than half. I think that's a pretty great number. I know that there are some targeted county level efforts to expand that as well. So hopefully we can track this moving forward and see how some of those activities impact this particular metric. So access for evidence-based services. Again, this is a local priority, so we wouldn't expect all early childhood councils to be represented here. In fact, I think 9 early childhood councils reported complete information for this particular measure. They reported that about 1.4% of the total estimated birth to 5 population in those ECCs access evidence-based services. But there was quite a bit of variance depending on the early childhood council. Nurse family partnerships and parents as teachers were the most commonly available across ECCs. So another local priority for some of you was to expand developmental awareness, screening, referral, evaluation, and intervention for young children. So we broke down these opportunities into awareness, screening, and referral. 3 councils reported that a total of 1,000 families were notified of the community screening process in the last year. 3 councils reported that a total of 789 children were screened in the last year through the community screening process. And then 594 children were referred for evaluation in the last year as a result of that community screening process. So this gives you some insight into each stage of that referral process. All right, moving on to our purple outcome, social emotional supports. On average, 13 social emotional support programs were available in a given catchment area, so which I think is a good number of opportunities. And a total of 8,300 individuals were served by these programs across the 29 reporting councils. I did note that councils reported having really highly diverse options for social emotional support, most ECCs. So 72% of ECCs had diverse options. And I define diverse as supporting programming in 5 or more of the 7 reporting areas. Those areas were listed out in that spreadsheet that you all completed. But if you have questions about that, I'm happy to list them out. We also wanted to look at the number of licensed childcare programs that access the relatively new ECMH consultation program. So most of the reporting ECCs, 8 of 14, showed an increase in the number of licensed programs accessing consultation services in the past year. More than half reported an increase. Some reported no change, and there was a decrease among some councils. But again, this is something we'll track. And I think there are a lot of factors that go into these increases and decreases. Okay. Our final statewide outcome, community investment. So across the state, ECCs garnered $154 million investment in the local early childhood system. Of that 154 million, 144 came from taxes passed in 3 ECC catchment areas. So a really good chunk of this investment is long-lasting tax changes, which I think is pretty exciting. On average, each council garnered about 112,000, and I believe that this does not include this tax estimate. It's like when you look at the remaining $10 million, that's how much we can ask on average. That is what each childhood council garnered. Right. So we talked about this not leftover, but this remaining $10 million, not from taxes. And we looked at how it was broken down across different areas of support. So other philanthropy, which could include, I think, just about anything. No, I really don't know what this would include. But we can talk about it more if you're interested. Other philanthropy and local philanthropy comprise the vast majority of this $10 million. Yeah. I would be curious to learn more about this as well and see how this changes over time. So this is a graph of the total investment garnered by each ECC with the sort of average highlighted. So there's a lot of variability in the investments by ECC. Sorry. All right, so we've made it through all of the measures. Good. I keep hitting buttons, I'm sorry. We made it through all of the shared measures, but I wanted to highlight some recommendations that came from the initial pilot that informed how we are collecting and reporting data moving forward. So a lot of the data collected was either missing things here or there, or there could be room for interpretation, or it could be confusing when we report it out. So some of these recommendations address that. We recommended collecting data in a single place with field validation. So rather than having you all enter stuff into multiple Google forms and multiple Google Sheets, the collection this time around is in one single Google form, everything centralized in one place that you have access to. We've offered you an opportunity to explain why data is missing. So in some cases, I can imagine you all are busy people. Maybe you just didn't have time to review that spreadsheet one more time. But we've given some direction in the new form that tells you, it gives you a way to tell us whether you don't have access to that information versus you just didn't have time to complete it. We are trying to separate the capacity building purpose from the reporting purpose. So I think in the initial conception of the pilot, Kristen, Megan, the data subcommittee really wanted councils to be able to use the information available to them to make meaningful decisions or meaningful summaries. And so having you all enter data was one way to do that. But I think we're moving forward using this as an opportunity for data collection and reporting on our part and separating that capacity building from this process. We will in the future use a reporting tool. We recommended utilizing a reporting tool. So right now I've shown you this really great overall summary, but I can imagine you all kind of want to see what the picture looks like for each of your councils. Or maybe how things look in your council compared to the state overall. And so we're going to be using a reporting tool in the future that will allow you to do that. And we want to choose a consistent point in time for reporting licensing data. So licensing data is pretty dynamic. Just as Brenda, you mentioned, the PDIS data is really dynamic. So in order to sort of address all these recommendations, myself and 2 analysts working with me are centralizing all of that, as many of you are already familiar with. So we've modified question formatting to make things a little easier. We've minimized data entry by using data we already own. So the licensing capacity data, for example, we already have some insight into. So rather than having you enter all that information, we'll pull it from our system and use that for these measures. And like I said, we're developing a reporting tool that's going to be accessible to you as well as internal to CDEC. So that was a ton of information. And I'm wondering what questions or concerns or follow-up would be helpful for you. Like, do you feel like you see your story in here somewhere?
Feel free to just take yourselves off mute.
All right. Feel free to follow up with Megan LeClaire, Kristen Lang, or myself if you review this after the fact and have any additional data-related questions. We're more than happy to answer. And I'm going to verbalize Megan's comment from the chat. The reporting deadline for the next pilot cycle is August 12th. They are holding office hours. I think if you have any trouble figuring out a Google form or want some guidance on what information to include, that's a great opportunity to connect with them. All right, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Kristen, for how much time and effort you guys have put into this. It's really cool seeing this data visualized. All right. Christine is going to present. We haven't seen her here at State TA Day for a while. We're so happy to have you. So Christine's going to be talking about family, childcare, home, navigator stuff.
Thank you, Charlie. It's always good to see you. And everyone on the call, I'm here to talk a little bit today about family child care home pre-licensing training and give you some training project updates. Can someone just give me a thumbs up to make sure that you're seeing my screen of slides? Thank you, Stacy. Oh, and for those of you that don't know me, my name is Christine Bauer. I'm Coaching Instructional Design Coordinator. I work on the Training and Instructional Design team with Jen McDonald, who you've probably touched base with already if you're asking any questions about Train the Trainer or the updated curriculum for family child care home pre-licensing. So today I'm going to talk about a few things. Look at that family child care home pre-licensing curriculum, talk about the trainer requirements and the Train the Trainer process, and then just a little bit more and an update on time frame. So let's start out with the materials. We've been working really hard on a robust set of curriculum, and we're excited because we hope that you'll find it's super useful for both facilitators, you trainers out there, especially our family child care home navigators, and then also for participants, a way that they can extend their learning by using the participant guidebook and revisit what they learned with you in training. We also have a training resources website that we're working on, and I'll give you a little peek at all of this. But essentially, figure out what is it that folks need in this curriculum. And this is our 15-hour course that professionals must complete prior to being awarded a child care license as they open their family child care homes. So applicants complete this training before that initial licensing visit, and then they're able to open their program. So we just really wanted this training to be supportive of all those things that family child care providers need, including a robust set of policies and procedures prior to that first visit. So I'm going to give you just a little peek at some of the curriculum materials. This is just an example of some of our slides. This is from Module 4. It's a 7-part module training, and you can provide that in whatever way works for you. You'll learn more through the Train the Trainer course. But I wanted to show you how the slides are set up to make it easier for you as a trainer. You're going to have access to just click and go right to the videos or resources that are attached to each slide. So whether that's a checklist that's going to be really helpful for folks, or the video you're actually watching together, you're also going to see that each slide that refers to the participant guide, or specifically a policy that's important to write in this training, you'll see a little icon at the top of the slides. What's great is that that icon at the top of the slides is exactly what you see as a facilitator on your facilitator guide, with all of your key points to emphasize on this slide. as well as any background information that might be helpful to you as a trainer, and what resources or licensing rules are connected to that specific slide and topic. So the beauty in that is that participants will have related materials in their participant guidebook. And as you all know, policies are so essential. We've got guidance to help draft those policies in the participant guidebook, as well as a rubric for them to do any self-assessment on each policy as they're getting started creating those handbooks for their families. And then just wanted to give you a little peek at a Under Construction Tools and Resources website, where we will house all links, all resources referred to in training here for participants. It'll probably be a helpful go-to for facilitators as well. But we just wanted you all to know that you won't have to have some separate resource. You'll be able to go right away to all of those materials there. So today's slide deck is available to everyone if you look in the chat. And I just wanted to share that there are going to be some questions and answers we may not have time to go over today, but I've tried to add all of those to the slide deck, including that we will be translating all materials into Spanish. And it should be November or December that we have those available of this year. So wanted to share that Family Child Care Home Pre-Licensing training will not be a self-paced online class. And that's because we just did that analysis of what folks need, and we really thought about what learners need to be successful in order to open a family child care home. And we found that an instructor-led training, whether it's held in person or virtually, is going to be the best format for delivering this curriculum. I see, Daisy, you've got a hand up. Go ahead and jump off mute.
Yeah, so with the curriculum that you guys have developed, so much of it is dependent on policies and procedures. And so I know with your your resources and tools website that you guys are going to release, is there going to be a template for providers to be able to type in and make their policies and procedures fillable?
Fillable. What we have in the participant guidebook here is a space after each policy. After you cover each policy in the training, you're going to have key points that are essential to have woven into that policy. A lot of those reminders are placed into the participant guidebook so that as they're drafting their policies, those are right there, including the licensing rules that are referenced. They'll draft those here, and then you as a trainer will decide how you're going to receive 2 drafted policies during the course of this training and provide feedback, written feedback on those drafted policies. So the way that the participant guide is set up is that they can actually write notes in the guide if it's printed, but they could, take that draft and type up that policy and email it to you if that's how you want to receive it for review and feedback.
Okay. And is it just the primary 7 that the new curriculum is going to ask for? Yeah. Okay.
Yep, we're covering 7 policies in the new curriculum. We are only going to ask trainers to provide feedback, to review and provide feedback on 2 policies. So that's one of our changes from pilot to the full curriculum.
Okay.
You'll learn a lot more about that and train the trainer as well. We kind of detail that out and make sure that you've got all questions covered around those pieces.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I'm going to jump right ahead. But thank you for raising your hand, asking questions as we go too, because I want to make sure we can answer as many of those as possible. When thinking about the trainer requirements for this course, folks that would like to provide family child care pre-licensing are going to first need to earn the trainer credential. So you can do that in the Colorado Shines PDAS. Once you've completed the associated prerequisite courses, those are going to be the courses that family child care home providers have to take, like infant safe sleep practices. You complete those, and then once you've got that trainer credential, you're able to take that train the trainer course, and a 2-hour online self-paced course in the PDAS. A little bit about that is that this is free, accessible in the PDIS. It's just going to be 2 hours to provide you some of that background information and the details about requirements in the training that you as a trainer specifically need to know. We'll talk a little bit about some ways to deepen learning in the training and give you some helpful tools and ideas as well. So you can take that online self-paced Train the Trainer course from anywhere online in the PDIS. So this kind of shows you that trainer approval process. All trainers will first have our foundational state credential, the Early Childhood Professional Credential. You can have the 2.0 or the 3.0 at a level 3. That's essentially going to get you access to apply for your trainer credential. Once you've applied for the trainer credential, you can complete those prerequisite courses in the PDIS and that self-paced family child care pre-licensing Train the Trainer course, and then you will automatically have all the curriculum released to you through the PDIS. So once you do all of those steps, you're going to have access to everything, and you won't have to wait for an email or any other back and forth. You'll do that all pretty self-sustaining through the PDIS. Prerequisites for the Train the Trainer, I've listed a little bit later in the slides. I won't go over that because you can see that those prerequisites on our training requirements for family child care homes chart. I'm going to throw that into the chat for y'all, just in case that's helpful. And then trainer approval, trainers will be approved for 3 years, and that aligns with our current trainer approval process for other trainings. So y'all are probably familiar with that already. And then essentially who can teach pre-licensing? It's going to be anyone who has gone through that Train the Trainer course and has become an approved trainer of family child care home pre-licensing. Right now, we've got the DECL approved training vendors listed here. So this chart may be familiar to some of you all that are have already gone through that approved trainer process. It's a little bit different for family child care pre-licensing as we're lifting these new curriculum materials, but we hope that it'll be clear and easy for folks as well. This is just a little picture of our timeline and really where we've been and where we're going. Here we are in, oh my gosh, is it almost August 2022? We're hoping to get all of these curriculum materials published mid-August. I am hosting some office hours for trainers in the last week of August, so that if you've got any questions, we can help you with that. And then we're going to be immediately translating the materials into Spanish so that we have, everything available to everyone. These materials are going to be 508 compliant. If you'd like to learn any more about what is 508 accessibility, I'm going to throw a little link in the chat just to help you understand part of the process of having the materials take a little bit longer to get out to public is just making sure that they're accessible for everyone that could be attending our training. So that's a little info for you there. And then once we have that published translated curriculum out in Spanish, we are looking for all trainers to begin using the new training materials in English and Spanish by January 1st, 2023. We recently talked to some of the folks that are on the call today, our family child care home navigators, and they let us know we've got to have a little bit of flexibility here. We want to get that Spanish translated curriculum out, and we want to make sure that we've got equity across the board for everybody attending this training. So this is an updated timeline and date. And I just want to point out that after 12/31/2022, non-CDEC family child care home pre-licensing certificate no longer going to be accepted. So we do have to have folks going through the family child care home pre-licensing training with the updated curriculum materials starting January 1st, if not earlier. Of course, you can adopt them as soon as they come out. And we know that some of our pilot folks have been waiting ferociously for those to come out. And I promise you, myself and my team are working so hard to make them accessible and to get them out to you in a quality format very soon. Now, I do want to leave a little space and time for any questions and answers. I know that may be important to you all on the call. But before I do that, just want to let y'all know that I will have office hours, essentially to support trainers. Any questions you have, maybe you're new to training, maybe you're new to training this curriculum. Really, I'm meant to be here as a resource for you all as we go through this change together. So if there are questions you have just about facilitation, if there are things that you wonder about, what will it be like to do a virtual training, or if there are particular questions you have about the curriculum materials or content within, I should be able to answer those questions or get you connected with the resource that will be able to help you right away. So I just want to share that out with everyone and make sure that you have that link to those office hours, which I'm going to throw into the chat right now. Now that we have an updated timeline for that January 1st, 2023 requirement to begin using these curriculum materials, I am going to send out a newsletter as well that will have this link in it. So as I said, today's slides are accessible to anyone during or after this presentation. I'm going to throw those in the chat, just so that you all can refer to them later if you like, but want to open it up for any questions that you may have about this process or things that are on your mind that we might be able to plan out and make sure we support you with. Feel free to come off mute.
I have a random question, Christine. So we know that there are the licensing incentives, you know, the bonus for when providers become licensed. Is that integrated into the pre-licensing trainings at all? Or is that, I just feel like that would be it'd be helpful to have that information going into the trainings.
You know, that is a really good question, Charlie. The things that are, you know, maybe time limited or temporary or based on current grants are not embedded into the curriculum because it's meant to
Be longer, yeah.
Yes, but really, I mean, our family child care home navigators, they're going to bring a lot of information, knowledge, background, resources to presenting training. And we imagine, like, I put as many local contacts as I could within the training so that folks can link, you know, no matter where they are in the state, to their local licensing specialist, their local CACFP consultant. But I know that our family child care home navigators are going to have a lot of those current or temporary resources, and we want you to share that absolutely as you're providing training.
Awesome, thanks.
All right, if you don't think of any questions now, I'm going to throw the Colorado Shines training email in the chat. Jen and I respond to that regularly. We'll get back to you as quickly as we can with any questions. And then I'll be sharing out that newsletter with our QRIS team, and they can get it to all of you as well.
Thank you so much, Christine. We are very excited to get this off the ground, and I know it's been a long time coming, and so this is really cool to finally get this going. All right. Jennifer O'Brien, you're on, right?
It's Charlene today.
Sorry about that. Hi,
That's
Charlene.
okay. Jennifer is taking care of some parents who got COVID. So we're she's not available, so asked me to hunt here. So I will go ahead and just provide some notes. Do I just, since this is the first time, do I share my screen? Is that?
Yeah, you should be able to just share your screen.
All right. 1 minute, I'll.
If you can, let me know and I can work some magic.
All right, 1 second, sorry. I thought I had it up and ready. One more time. Okay, so everyone can see that? All
Yes.
right, well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlene Chipetti, and I work with the Credential Tech Review team at CDE, and just providing a few updates on the credential and where we're at right now. Right now, we have approved 3,980 credentials. There are 38 pending credentials right now. We've either asked for, we requested more information, or they've been resubmitted and haven't been completed yet. There have been 100 unapproved credentials. Just a quick note on those. Those are credentials that we've asked for more information and the documents supplied have not been were not needed or didn't qualify, or they didn't reply. So we have to have a minimum of 10 points or from two components to qualify for a credential. So that's what those represent. And then currently we have 3,022 applications that are pending. And right now we're reviewing applications from the end of February. Let's see, a couple of new things just as of note for your reference is that there is a new knowledge article now. It's the ongoing professional development page. So you can access that by going to learn more about your credentials, and there's a link there. I believe it's also under the home link as well on the navigation screen, so that's a new updated knowledge article for your reference. A new thing as well is now applicants are going to be able to see the reviewer comments. So this is something we've been wanting to have for a while. So say that not everything was approved, or someone is wondering where those points came from. Often there's going to be some notes in their applications. So how they're going to get that is they want to go to My Applications page, Archived Applications, and they're going to click on Detail, and then you're going to be able to see, and there may not be notes in there, but there might be. So encourage all the applicants to take a look and see if there's anything that might help assist them in understanding how their credentials were scored. Right now, the closed applications that's not visible in the closed applications, but that's something that is in a ticket and they're going to update soon. So just wanted to let you know that these are options now that hopefully will help professionals when they're wanting to see why something was scored the way it was. These are some items that we're seeing in applications. These first 10 have already been reported to this group, so I'm not going to go through those right now. I just wanted to also point out a few other items that we see fairly frequently. And letters of experience is something that can be a challenge for people. We're asking for the same thing that they're required from licensing, but just as a reminder, the letters need to be on letterhead, or if you don't have letterhead, we have to have the name of the program, the address, and contact information. So if you need to verify, those are the items that we need to have. And including the license number is always helpful if we're struggling to figure something out. Having that information makes it way easier for the reviewers to check on. The experience, we need the total hours worked. That's how experience is scored. It's by scoring 1 point for 1,820 hours. So we need those hours. And we also need to know how many of those hours are for early childhood. So if a program works from 0 to age 12 or 15, we need that separated out. So we just need to know the hours worked for with the ages of 0 through 8. Also a reminder, we need a signature on those letters. And those are the items for the experience section of the credential. One other item I'd like to make sure people know about is that when we request information, sometimes if there's something that we are requesting for the professional to add some additional information for the credential, after they address it, either they're updating a previous last name, or let's say they're adding some documents to their application, they need to click on this I have addressed comments box. It's at the bottom of each section that we're asking, and then they have to click submit. If they don't do that, it doesn't notify us that they've replied to it. we do check that before closing an application, but that can get missed. So I just wanted to, point that out for people, make sure that they're clicking on that box and clicking submit so it gets sent back to us. That gets back to us in a more timely manner. And just as a note, with this new PDIS application, the 3.0 credential, some people were thinking, I think, that they had to apply and they had to do that to renew a credential, even though they had a credential that they liked. If that's the case, if they have a credential level that's still good for a while, and they accidentally applied for a credential, they can go ahead and delete it, and that gets it out of the queue. It helps us with our numbers, and we don't have to spend time on it. If they have a credential level that they like, if they want to apply, obviously they're going, we're happy to do that. But just have them, apply for about 6 months out before their expiration. They can go ahead and apply for a credential and put their application in. But just if they did it by accident or they're happy with their current credential, we're suggesting just go in and delete it if they have applied and they're okay with the current credential level that they have. So those are the recent things that were on my mind when putting together the slide. So does anyone have any questions? Happy to answer. Okay. Well, I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Charlene, for.
There is a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry.
Can we get these slides? We'll be sending out the agenda, and all those slides will be linked onto the agenda. So, yes. But then Karen has this additional question here, Charlene.
Yes. So, is this something that you didn't get a letter prior to the doors closing?
No, I'm asking on behalf of several teachers who have worked previously in other locations well before the change to the new 3.0, when they just had to submit, the Excel document. And
Right.
So they're looking for, how do I verify employment when that employer has closed the door? I mean, they have, tax information, but they're not going to be able to get a letter.
Right. And that's something that I think that we, since this is a new requirement, that we're willing to work with, right? That's something that I don't have just do this, this, and this for you right now, but it's, the tax information may help. We're willing to work with professionals, knowing that might happen. I don't have, like I said, I don't have a set of a good list for you, but I think that's a good idea to have maybe some suggestions if professionals are in that situation. Tax information is good if they can get a hold of that person and they can just, verify those hours or something approximate to those hours. I think that's something we could consider as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Charlene, this is Tiffany with TPEC. So since the approval process is taking about 5 months, those credentials that are expiring, should we be encouraging individuals to apply 5 months prior to that expiration, or will that credential hold until reviewed and approved, even if it's an expiration?
Yeah, I definitely apply. I'm suggesting 6 months.
6 months.
Ahead of time, and I forget, and I'm hoping maybe someone else can help me out here. As far as if it will be extended, isn't there a, oh gosh.
We could get an answer from licensing. I thought as long as they can show that they've applied, that the specialist will accept an expired, but we probably should
Verify
double
that.
check on that.
Yeah, it seems to me that there's a process in place, affidavit or something, right? That I think that, because knowing that this, you know, we've had, you know, technical issues with the credential for a long time now. So I think that is on licensing. Tiffany, I'll see if I can find some information, and maybe I'll try to add it to the slides so you guys can have that. Oh, I think Brenda might have found some information there.
That is a link that we're providing, and
Thank you. Yes.
so that might be helpful.
Thanks, Brenda.
It looks like Shay has a question. If you want to come off mute, Shay.
I do. So some teachers I'm working with, I have noticed that when they get a message saying that there's something wrong with their application, it seems to stop. They're not getting an approval or a rejection. They're just getting a message that there's something wrong with them, like you mentioned, with a training certificate or whatever. And we'll click, I have addressed these comments, but there's no, I guess there's no approval or rejection of the application. There's just comments. And I'm just wondering, I guess I'm misunderstanding, because I thought you just said that that only happens when they actually approve or reject an application.
Well, and maybe I was wondering if I understood your question. So when we send out a request for form, there's a couple different things, right? That we can request more information from the professional. And when we do that, that goes to them, and they'll see that requesting more information on their application. They can go in, and that's when they're going to add, you know, address any questions that we have or add documents. And that's when they click on that, you know, I've addressed these issues, and then they should click submit. A lot of times, you know, I think some of those steps are being missed. And then it can get into a queue where it's, you know, it just, we're creating a process so that we can go back and review those, but sometimes those can get a little lost if they don't. Now, once we do go back and say they haven't applied or they have addressed the questions, then we'll go ahead and either approve it based on what we have, or maybe request some more information from them. And then if we don't hear back, then we'll close it, or we'll approve it based on what was there. Is that, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
So yeah, I know I didn't state it. I didn't ask the question clearly. So I'm working with a client yesterday, and she received 3 comments that 3 of her training certificates didn't have the correct information, but she didn't really need them per se to qualify. She has many points to qualify for her level 3, but she got the question, but she didn't have an approval or a denial. So we were kind of confused as to the process, because she has the question. So she needs to just click that she's addressed it. Yes. And will it still go through? I mean, it's just a little bit confusing, because there was just, you know, questions about these training certificates, but she still would have qualified. So I'm just wondering if those are going to still go through, or she has to do something about those certificates.
And I'm wondering if because there's a couple different processes, right? We have the external trainings certificates that are getting reviewed,
right?
And so you might get, and they'll get feedback, but sometimes those are done prior to us even starting the application.
Okay, that makes more sense then. So you're sometimes reviewing parts of them before you're reviewing the entire application. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, great. That's what I'm guessing is happening in that case. If not, just have them contact the help desk and we can take a look at it.
Okay. Thank you.
There was a question in here, Charlene, about the tax, the new tax laws. Do they need to have a credential 3.0 to get the tax credit?
I am not the right person to ask that question. I'm sorry.
Me either. We will work on getting you an answer for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I don't know what that's going to be. Jennifer?
Yeah, so my question is because in the bill it says they have to have, I believe it has to be 6 months for them to qualify for that tax credit. And so a lot of my professionals I'm working with are really being anxious because their credential has not been approved. And then what is the deadline because of this language that is in the bill? So I'm just clarifying the many questions I have.
Yeah, those are great questions. I'm not sure. Again, I apologize that I'm not the right person. I'm not sure what is in place for that. Anybody else on the call that can address that?
I'm sending out a note to our workforce team to see if there's somebody on that team who can potentially clarify that. But we'll work on getting an answer to that for sure, or just who to address. Oh, Stephanie's on here. Any chance, Stephanie, you have any insight?
I may. What's the question?
The question is, do you need to have a credential 3.0 to qualify for the tax incentive? Or does it just need to be an active, unexpired credential?
So the language in the bill says that you have to, for at least 6 months of the taxable year, hold an early childhood professional credential. And I mean, there's some other stipulations in there with regard to head of household or some other pieces of information. So if you think about the tax credit, it will be for the 2022 year. So if somebody holds an ECPC for 6 months within the 2022 calendar year, they meet the other requirements that are outlined in the bill, then they should qualify for that tax credit.
Right. So they can have a credential 2.0, meet those requirements, and still, that's true.
We're working, I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought for a minute. We are working right now with the Department of Revenue to iron out some details about the backlog. So I don't remember who asked that question, but I know I heard her say that some staff are getting a little anxious. So we are working with them, letting them know there's a backlog. So we're working on a process. So happy to share an update on that when we get a little bit closer to figuring out how we want to handle that with DOR.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Sure.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In the interest of time, we are going to have to move on to our next presentation. But Charlene, is it okay if folks reach out to you or Jennifer if they have additional questions?
Absolutely. You bet.
All right. Awesome. And we know this has been an uphill climb for you guys since the new credential rolled out, and we know that you're working your butts off. So it's much appreciated by us in the community here.
Yeah. Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate it.
Cool. Josh, are you out there?
I am.
All right. Josh is going to talk to us a little bit about Colorado Shines. Let's get this show on the road.
Right. Hi everyone. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Thanks for having me. I see a lot of familiar faces and names. So yeah, I'm going to talk real quick. Did that follow? I just kind of moved some things around. You guys still see my screen?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. So yes, I'm Josh Franklin. I'm the data manager for at Clayton Early Learning in the Quality Assessment Services Department, in charge of scheduling Colorado Shines assessments. So status of the queue. So we have 130 programs right now in the queue to get scheduled. And I've built out our October schedule, and I'll be notifying those programs probably today. So when a program is going to submit, I expect about 9 months right now, and that is getting better. We got the staff impact of resignations and people moving on, just a lot like programs a little behind. So we were understaffed for a bit, but now we've hired everyone and we're fully staffed for assessors. So we're getting them trained up, and then so in the fall we're going to be at full capacity. So I expect that wait time of 9 months to kind of whittle away. I think it's going to go into, right, which is crazy to think that 3 years, 2023, on those months that we had, April, May, where we didn't do observations, that's going to be a big time where we're going to get caught up, which seems like forever away. And to think that it's been 3 years of the pandemic is kind of crazy. But yeah, things are getting better. So if it's important to remind providers that if they're year round or if they're just a school year program to note that, because when I schedule, sometimes that's inaccurate and then I have late drops and it slows down the process. Same thing with programs who have alternative pathways, or if they're going to pursue an alternative pathway, if they get their applications reversed, that helps me just knowing what the programs that are in the queue are intending to rate. And then for extensions and just in general about rating, programs can't, choose the rating month, and I know that there's, right, getting new kids, September, there's some anxiety maybe in the wintertime around not being able to go outside, right? Where providers are supposed to, provide quality care throughout the year. So encourage programs to talk with you and then talk with the state about extensions. And then Charlie and Karen will kind of work that out. So yeah, I was really quick. Any questions?
We have a question in the chat. Will programs who have already received an extension be provided with another one if ratings are going to expire due to the 9-month wait time? So once a program's in the queue, their rating will not expire.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't realize my screen wasn't on. So yeah. So if they, as long as they've submitted an application, they are good to their rating is going to get held until they go through a rating. But once they get scheduled and they're like, oh, I can't, then there'll have to be a discussion about another extension. That's bump up to Charlie and Karen and Lilith and that team. So
yeah. And in general, extensions are a one-time. In general, they're a one-time thing, due to extenuating circumstances. It's not just they're not quite ready yet. It's really due to something happening in the program. And
we're working with ECCs and programs. We know this is difficult times, so just don't hesitate to reach out if you've got an unusual circumstance.
But if you do have a program that right. Yeah. Yeah. So we talked about it before, but if you do have a program that would like an extension or would like to discuss it, just reach out to Lilith or Michelle or I. Any other questions here for Josh? How do we verify if someone is in the October queue if they were bumped up from this past spring? I think Josh is going to send out the October.
Yeah, I'm going to send out some October notifications to the programs directly. And if you should have access to that schedule, I think in Salesforce, so navigators and other supports, it is really good. And another reminder is add yourself as QI Navigator to programs you support, and then you will get automated emails right when the rating month notification is super helpful. And then when the ratings are released and a couple things ongoing, and that really keeps you guys connected to the programs. So,
and also just you guys can see the rating month once it's assigned. If you're in Salesforce and you're in that, I think it's in the ratings section. It's like the roadmap section. It'll say which month that they're scheduled into.
All right. So if anyone has any more questions for Josh, you know how to get a hold of him, or you can reach out to your program officer and we can help connect you. Thank you. It's exciting to hear that you guys are fully staffed up. I know it's been a roller coaster ride for everybody. So
for everyone. Yeah. So hopefully, like, fingers crossed, everything, stays smooth. So, or gets smoother, I guess. So, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's great to see everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Josh.
Josh. We always appreciate your partnership and coming on the call. Appreciate it.
All right. Lilith is going to talk to us about the sugar audit, and I think you may have gotten some communication, so she's going to clarify some of that.
Okay.
So Lilith and I are going to tag team on this because I think some of you are aware, but not all of you are aware that we went through an audit last year with the sugar data system. And that was a result of a fraudulent situation that got brought to our attention. And so the CDHS audit team did a very deep dive into the system, not only with the data, but also just this, you know, the components of the sugar system. And so we got great information from that is going to help us, you know, move forward and have better processes that'll, you know, keep us in better shape as far as like avoiding future fraudulent situations. So yeah, a couple of things that they found. Oh, Lilith, can you go back? So the results on the data side of things, they looked at our capital improvements, they looked at our quality improvements, spending records, and also our coaching records. So, and then from those results, 40% of our capital improvement spending records were lacking proper documentation. That sounds like just an incredible amount of the overall. But it might have been one little piece of it. And so we're going to help to support that going forward. Other findings were 84% of our quality improvement spending records lacked proof of payment. So we'll be working on some processes there. Coaching reimbursements weren't such an issue, except that we found multiple like inaccuracies with data entry. So I know data entry is tough no matter what, and you've got lots of folks in there data entering things, but so we're gonna also be working on a few processes to help support how we can be better at that. So Lilith, you wanna talk a little bit about some of the recommendations and what we're planning to work on?
Yes, so this is number one recommendation is just strengthening the review of the capital improvement records. And there's a couple different pieces to this. So as far as programs or early childhood councils that are helping their programs to submit these documents when they are requesting capital improvement, there will be a requirement for a statement of support where you can attest that this capital improvement spending will support program goals specifically geared towards that infant and toddler piece of the capital improvement side. So another aspect of that is ensuring that all of that required documentation is complete and accurate before an early childhood council is approving this in sugar. So the bids, the proof of payment, if pictures are needed, all of those different pieces of documentation are there. They are legible, they are accurate. You know, it's all there in sugar. And then, you know, aside from changing some of the documentation that is out there now to just be really clear and concise and match exactly what we need, we're also going to be preparing documentation and training for all sugar users to go over any of these edits or clearer distinctions that we've made within the documentation. Stacy, you had a question. Go ahead. Stacy, you're muted.
One of these days, we'll all figure it out. With that first bullet, so for our council, we submit all the programs give us all their stuff and we submit it on their behalf, which also represents our support of that. We also have them get a letter of support from their coach and their licensing specialist for all capital projects. So would that be enough, or do you also want actually a letter from me in support too?
Karen, do you have thoughts?
I think we're just going to have, like, some ECCs are already doing this. They have, you know, in there just a document just supporting how it supports quality in the program. So we're going to look at what's happening currently so that this isn't brain damage here, and just use that as an example. So we'll get back to you on that, because
I'll share what we do.
Yeah, that'd be great, Stacy.
Okay.
So the next recommendation that came out of the sugar audit was improving the oversight of QI spending. So what this kind of looks like is, again, along with that capital improvement documentation piece, really for all spending, ensuring that that required documentation is complete and accurate before approving these requests and before issuing out payments if they are reimbursements. And along with that is ensuring that proof of payment is included in a spending request when a reimbursement is being asked of. So, you know, again, with this, we're preparing documents and training for all sugar users so that any changes, updates, edits made to the documentation is going to be really clear. Everyone, you know, we have these clear standards. We know what counts as a letter of statement. We know what counts as proof of payment, all of these things. So just getting that out to people. And then for our third one, we touched briefly on this, is strengthening the review of the anomalous coaching submissions. So looking at maybe timestamps, ensuring that the proper AM, PM are put into sugar, looking at the amount of time. Was it over 24 hours? Was it an unusual time? Was it 16 hours? And then again, developing training for expectations for entering coaching into BC Connect so that we aren't seeing as many kind of weird issues happening at councils. And then I think, Julia, you had your hand raised. Go ahead.
Oh, hello. We all love audits, don't we? So just some questions. When you, on each of these three components, you've talked about developing a training for expectations for entering coaching. Is that something you're creating, or is that something you're expecting us to create?
We're just about to get to that, Julia. So that's a wonderful segue.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you.
So actually, that was perfect. So we wanted to let you guys know what the next steps were. Again, this is a process that's been going on for, I think, close to a year, honestly. And we have made some commitments to our audit team. And these are some of the things that we've said that we would address. So making updates to address some of the recommendations, preparing training materials, and we will take that on in our office. We may very well reach out to, like, say, the data subcommittee and ask them to do some review of that so that before it's completely rolled out, we'll have some input from councils. We will be hosting mandatory trainings for everyone who is a registered user. And so what we think that will look like at this point in time is just, we'll give a list of dates and people can sign up for it. And we're going to try to keep it brief. This is not redesigning the system in any way, shape, or form. It is just enhancing what's there and just enforcing some of the processes that need to be seen through audit. And also, one of the things that I struggled with a little bit on this whole audit process was, it's not to say that we don't have the proper documentation somewhere. Like, you guys might have it in your files, and that's was not the purpose of this audit. The purpose was, how well is the sugar data system working for us? So I want to just say that because, when you look at the numbers of, like, failure rate, it looks like we're just, like, really in bad shape. But I think if we dug into it and we actually asked councils, hey, could you present that? I'm pretty sure they could. So keep that in mind, that these enhancements and trainings are really more around what we need to see inside the system to make those final approvals. So, and then we will be working on rolling these trainings out. We're keeping it general, fall of 2022. I would say sometime in between September and November, we'll have some of those dates ready for you guys, because obviously we're still working on all of this. But Julia.
Don't say my name like that. It's not nice.
You say it with love, my dear.
Oh, I'm hoping so. So knowing of our own processes, and I'm going to be honest, it hasn't been the QI side, but just using sugar for E&E was really challenging, and just the quantity of the work that's coming along. So we've already started putting some new processes in place. My staff obviously don't even know them yet. I was actually working on them earlier today, but to tighten up some of that. I think my biggest question around this process is going to be those coaching logs and just documenting that. One of the things that I think has been a hindrance to us in using the Sugar system is there's this beautiful communication tool in Sugar we used when we initially started using Sugar that we're not allowed to use anymore. And I think it would be amazing. I know EC Connect is great for providers doing the spending and stuff, but I would like to make a pitch out there to be able to get some additional licenses for coaches to be able to use that communication, whatever it's called. But I remember we could log emails. I can't remember. I can see it in my head, but I can't remember what tab it's on in Sugar. But you could log when you emailed someone, when you called someone, what the response was, the follow-up. And it was all right there on that provider's account. And it was very easy to track what was happening. And also that went with if you were contacting for spending, if you were missing a document. And then, right now the QI navigators can put that stuff in, but coaches can't see it. So there's just not a fluid way between EC Connect and Sugar to see the whole picture unless you're me or our navigator. Unless Lilith looks like she's going to be like, yes, you can. This is how you do it. So I'm just excited. I would just love to be either to see EC Connect more in line with Sugar or Sugar become more accessible to coaches so that we can eliminate some of these issues.
Yes, agreed. And I can actually send out some follow-up information with this on how the EC Connect system back when I was with Denver's Early Childhood Council became a little bit more integrated with Sugar so that coaches and NAVs can now see communications in Sugar that navigators have logged, and to be able to see what coaches have done, what their coaching was about, and then also the navigators communicating with them. So it's not so much that coaches are able to log anything, but those two places for communication and where you're putting that documentation or those descriptions of coaching and other follow-up materials can now be more easily accessed, or what I would think of as just a little bit easier to see for everyone. So I can send that along, and then if you have further questions, Julia, I'd be happy to follow up with you.
Yeah, I think my big piece is right now we're in the big outreach, right? And so we're reaching out to programs. And so to be able to mark a program is maybe they don't want us to contact them anymore. Only myself and Melinda can do that at our council. Right? But I'm not the one making the phone calls, and neither is Melinda. That's our coaches, so it's that component of being able maybe to have a component. I mean, we were able to do the spending component, but is there a way to interconnect Sugar to be able to log those calls as well before the MOU is signed? And, coaches don't log things until after the MOU is signed. We want to be able to log stuff to show the work we're doing to outreach as well. And so we all can see it. That's where I'm going. Initially, when we used Sugar, it was amazing. Not that it's not now, we've all learned it, but at the same time, I do think there's some areas where Sugar is very much more usable that we're not able to access unless you're just a navigator.
So it sounds like there's some opportunities maybe to revisit that, right, Lilith?
Yes.
Yeah, for the communications module or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks, Julia, for bringing that up.
I think
Mandy.
Yeah.
There. Okay. Had to figure out how to unmute myself. Mine goes back a little bit to the proof of payment and final invoices and talking about the documentation. When we're submitting these to be approved, a lot of times the work's not done, so there's no payment and there's no, because if we have a home provider, they're not going to go spend $7,500 before they can get a capital improvement grant. They're going to want to know, do I get it first? So to approve it based on that, do you just want a tab that is providing a spot for that when it comes in, or does that make sense? Am I missing something?
Karen, if you have other things to add to this.
I don't use the system. That's good to say, but I don't. And so I'm not totally tracking, because I know with the capital improvement request, we just need the bids and like the before picture and, a statement of how the work is going to improve quality or something like that, right?
If it is logged as a reimbursement to the provider, so
Right.
meaning they either did it or they're asking for that money so that they can get it done, I would, there could be more exploration or discussion on what that looks like as far as the timelines for that. So like if a provider A wants to install, some sort of structure in their backyard to enhance their learning environment in the back, then if they don't have the $75,000 to put down for it, but they need that money to then make that project happen, then I would say probably reconciling and paying them once it's done, when you would have those pictures. But it's, it's one of those things where then the money doesn't go to them when they would need it. So I think that would be something that we kind of discuss and figure out how to word that so that it is making sense for those providers that are asking for the funds, so that you're not paying a vendor directly, because I think that can be.
See, and I think that's part of what the audit team probably saw, is that we do make those approvals up front, and then the contractor gets paid or the provider gets paid after the fact, but then nobody's going in to check that the after pictures have been put in.
Gotcha.
And so that's just one example of some of the things that they found. So
That makes sense. I just want to make sure that we can still get them approved up front, because most people aren't going to follow through if we don't.
right. And I think specifically there were a lot of quality improvement reimbursements that didn't have proof of payment, more so than the capital stuff. So that's where, maybe we were reimbursing even for, like maybe a course that somebody took or something. We still have to have an appropriate proof of payment in the data system once with a reimbursement.
And they want that all logged in Sugar.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Okay. That's a lot.
Karen, when they're asking for that proof of payment, as we always go in and put the check number that we utilize here at the college, what the date it was, but we don't put a copy of the check. Is that something they're going to be looking for, or is the number? Because I know the college sends the proof of payment to you guys, but do we need to put that into Sugar as well?
Let me verify that, Julia.
Okay, because
I think Mandy's asking the same question. It's like, holy cow, what is actually needed? Unfortunately, the auditor that did our audit has since moved on to a different department, but I can chat with the supervisor to make sure that we have the adequate. See, this is a great question. This is why we want to take this information before we finalize it, back to you guys to ask these questions. So thank you for that.
Just a quick shout out on timing. I know it's almost 2:30, so if you have to hop off, that's fine. We do have a few questions in the queue. So we're going to try to get those answered. And Bonnie was going to present on Circle grants, but we're just going to share her follow-up in the follow-up email that we send. She was going to talk about the Circle grant recipients, and you can check out the link to the Early Milestones website to see how that all played out. But let's continue the conversation if you're able. It looks like we have Jessica, then Lisa, then Daisy, then Danielle.
And I actually have to jump off. So if you guys want to carry on my behalf, I appreciate it. So thank you guys so much for being with us this afternoon. And you're welcome to send me questions as well through email.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Let's have Jessica ask her question, and then Lisa put hers in the chat.
Thank you, Charlie. I just want to, I'm going to try and be articulate about this because this is not my forte. So I just want to try and be reasonable about how I phrase this. But as far as the proof of payment in Sugar, for us, it tends to be a cash flow issue. So we can't necessarily all the time, especially with CSQI, and we've got several programs that are spending their $3,000 in materials or whatever it may be. We don't always have the funds to cover to pay that first. That's why we have a terms net 30 so that we could submit for reimbursement and get some of that cash into our bank account before we pay it. And that's how I've historically done it. And so I don't know if that's actually legal now when you're looking at that kind of issue. But for a smaller program like us with a very small budget and not a whole lot of cash flow, we really need that reimbursement before we pay. So how do we reconcile it? And this might be a question for later, but I just need to put it out there so that we're aware of it. But how would we reconcile it in sugar and then provide a proof of payment and then get our cash back timely?
That's a really good question. And, I think that's going back to Karen's. These are documents that will be required in sugar. Should an audit happen again, or should we need to do a review of the documents in sugar? If we're approving things so that your small council or your home providers can have that cash so they can get their capital improvements done, and then they provide you or you are provided or have the documentation to back that up, then I think that's not the issue, but the thing that's important is making sure that at the end of all of this, if there were an auditor to go back through, they would see that for a request that you put in or one of your providers has put in, Jessica, that at some point all of the documentation was added. When you approved it, you may not have had an after picture, but you put one in later within that grant cycle. So if it's like March 1st to June 30th of 2023, then within that cycle, there is the proper documentation to show that, not necessarily at the approval process, but just within that whole process. Does that make a little bit more sense? Because I'm hearing now a couple of questions are kind of along the same lines. How will we pay our providers and get these things done if we have to have these documents first? And maybe the clarifying issue is really these documents need to be in sugar, but the way that we are approving is maybe looks a little bit different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And then I just put in the comments that you would post something into that record post reconciliation. But then Julia brought up the point that once you reconcile it, you can't go back in unless you reopen it to edit it. So I don't know if there's like maybe a third step, or if it's just a type of like Google Drive folder that you send all of your proof of payments into. I don't know. I have tend to send my accounting statements so that I can show that it's an accounts payable. Once we receive the cash, then we pay it. So,
and these are all notes within sugar, so you can directly attach them. You don't actually have to open them for editing when you're attaching a note, I believe. And we can, if that's an issue or if that's something that's changed, I can definitely look at it and we can troubleshoot it. But I think when you have to change the amount, you do have to unreconcile it and edit it. But when you're just adding more documentation to it, if you've got before pictures or after pictures, or if you've got that proof of payment, you can simply add that as a note, as a document, and then it's in there. So I think, again, really following the process of, if it truly is paying for something that's done, you need to have all those pieces. If it is not, at some point within that grant time frame, you do need to have all of those pieces. Possibly not for approval if it isn't done, but at some point before the grant ends, all of those pieces of documentation need to be there, again, in case someone comes back and says, oh, I want to take a look at this record. I really want to see what documentation was reviewed, what was used, yada, yada. They don't necessarily need to know that it was approved when, but they do need to see that that documentation is there to back it up, if that is a little bit more clarifying on the timeline of things.
And there's agreement that you can add documents after reconciliation. You can add notes. So it looks like Daisy had her hand raised. You still have a question, Daisy?
I do. So when we are putting in documentation for a capital improvement project that is, let's say it's $25,000. This is an E&E, situation. And we're paying half of it up front, and then we are going to pay the other half upon completion of the project. Is there a way that we don't have to redundantly upload before and after pictures into both spending requests?
So I think for E&E capital improvement, there might be a little bit of a different documentation or procedure, just because it's completely different grant guidelines. So,
I mean, and I think it's that way for CSQI as well. If we're paying half of it up front to a vendor, you know, it asks for before pictures and then it asks for after pictures. And then once we pay the second half, it's asking for the same thing. So it's just kind of redundant. It doesn't take a ton of time, though it does take time to hunt down before pictures again, where you have to go back into the other spending record to re-download the before pictures to put in there.
and would this be if you're using two separate vendors, or are you using?
It's the same vendor.
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, Sugar doesn't understand that the second half isn't necessarily the second half. And it's not understanding that the first half we're not going to have after pictures to pay that first half, that 50% down.
Right. We can kind of dig into that a little bit more, Daisy, if you want at another time. As far as I'm trying to remember, basically Easy Connect will let you put up like whatever documents you want. It's really on council to make sure that the right documents are in there at some point during that time frame, and then for us as the Department of Early Childhood to be reviewing those and asking questions if we're seeing weird discrepancies or missing documents and things like that. I think that, you know, yes, it might be a little bit more time to have to add them in should you use the same vendor but do a different request to pay the other portion of it. But I think that, you know, for that, when you are submitting the request, you can really just put in whatever and then make sure that when I'm sorry.
Like a placeholder.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to make sure that, like, when we do get audited and those auditors are looking at that, are they saying or seeing, oh, this is just the first half of 2 payments, let's go look at this other chunk? Or is it going to create more issues where we need to have all of the documentation and all of the spending requests in all of the spending details?
I mean, I would say that you would have to have all of the documentation by the time that the project is actually completed, when you would have the documentation.
Correct, but in both sets of spending details.
Yes.
Okay.
Just because they could, I mean, because right now, you know, and I don't know what development, you know, we would look at to have this differently, or if it's even possible, but right now, as far as, you know, I remember, and as far as it working in the system, it does treat it as 2 kind of separate, you know, spending requests. And so if you don't have documentation in one, but you have one in the other, and they are the same things, auditor isn't going to know, hey, this is the part 2 of this. So just being really clear in case they if they were to randomly pull, or if I were to randomly pull a record to look at, then I see there's documentation in all of them.
Okay, perfect.
And it looks like Danielle still has her hand raised, so this will be our last question. Unless it was already answered.
Here we go. Hello,
cool.
everybody.
Hey.
Hi. So I wanted to jump in there, but Karen's gone, but I think Karen's comment was correct in that those numbers, like, hey, these numbers look really bad, but I'm sure our contractors, our early childhood councils, have this documentation at their offices if they were ever audited. And that's, if it helps folks, I mean, that's really what this is all about. I mean, we're contractors for this work, and at the end of the day, we're responsible for having the proper documentation to defend how we ask for our reimbursements and executed our grants. So if the only place that you're relying on holding that documentation is Sugar, then I would think about that, because you're not actually in control of Sugar. Sugar was developed, I've been around long enough to know that Sugar was developed to help everybody, and Sugar does a lot of things really, really well. But if that's the only place you have your documentation, I would suggest that you have a backup. You know, you need to look at your internal financial controls and where all your documents are for an eventual audit. There's more to that. Sugar, would have to have a lot of resources to keep up with the dynamic business environment that we all live in. But I like sugar a lot. There's a lot of bits and pieces that work very, very well. So I don't want sugar to go anywhere, but realistically, sugar is one place to load up documents so our friends can see them very easily. But really, we have to have everything on file for an on-site audit. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, and we appreciate that suggestion and just general information. Sugar is an imperfect system. There are flaws, and we've kind of built it to work with what we have going on and have added onto it over the years. So,
and it's fantastic. Our providers would not receive the support they receive if we didn't have it. So it is fantastic that way.
But yes, it's always a good idea to have multiple backups for your documentation because things do happen. Systems aren't perfect. So, all right. Any other last minute questions? I appreciate you guys hanging on for the last 10 or so minutes over. If you continue to have questions or, Lilith and our team are going to be sharing out some more information regarding this audit, and we have some training docs and really specifics coming out your way. So, just reach out during our check-ins or at any time to Lilith or Michelle or I if you continue to have questions on this. This was a big state TA day. I didn't think it would go this long, but never know. So thank you all so much for your support and continuing to work hard and for getting this fiscal year off to a great start. It's going to be a big, exciting year. So we're looking forward to partnering with all of you. So have a wonderful day. Stay dry. Watch out for hail. And look forward to speaking soon.
Thank you, everybody.